Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. I seem to have fallen into this hole of coming across series or movies that look really good, getting really excited for them, and then starting my search only to realize that there have been licensing issues or whatnot, and a legal place to watch the anime in question is nowhere to be found. And a few months ago, the Anthem of the Heart was just another entry on that list, which was disappointing, but there were so many other anime on my radar that I moved on pretty quickly, adding it to a different list of titles to be revisited at a later time. Personally, there is very little that's quite as satisfying as having that patience rewarded. I found myself on Amazon Prime's video service a few weeks ago and decided I'd check again, just to see. And there it was. I'm not going to question it. The Anthem of the Heart starts with June Naruse, a very outgoing young girl who loves fairy tales and never stops talking. In her town, there's a castle, what's actually a fancy lover's hotel, and June, who dreams of finding her own prince one day, frequently makes the journey to come see it. One of these days, she's just in time to see her father leaving the castle with a beautiful woman she assumes must be a princess. June, who's too young to understand what's really going on, rushes home, thrilled, to tell her mother about her new discovery, that her dad is a prince, which leads to her parents' divorce soon after. This probably would have been enough to mess her up a little anyway, as she gets older and starts making connections, but the day her dad moves out, he specifically tells her that it's her fault for always talking too much. This brings us to the first scene we see of June's subconscious brought to life. An egg prince appears before her and basically just berates her for being thoughtless and hurting people. This moment ends with the egg prince placing a curse on her. He warns June that if she doesn't seal away her words, her own fairy tale will be forever out of reach. Which, all in all, was a really cool way to depict how a young child comes to understand her parents' divorce, and more specifically her role in it. This fairy tale the prince speaks of is really just a substitute for general happiness in life. She's come to relate her words to her parents' unhappiness. So she does what the egg demands. The next time we see June, she's in high school, and she hasn't spoken a word since that day. It makes her physically ill anytime she tries, which she's rationalized as being the curse. We get to see an example of this the day this story really begins, as her teacher is struggling to get his students excited for the year's Community Outreach Night, an event put on by the school. Much like you tend to see with cultural festivals in anime, each class has to decide on some form of entertainment to put together for the town, their audience, but there isn't a single student in June's class who's really enthusiastic about it. They all view it as more of a chore than anything else. So with no volunteers, their teacher appoints 4 students to be the committee in charge of organizing their event himself. Daiki, the baseball star who's out for the season with an injury, Natsuki, the head of the cheer squad, Takumi, who's already been established as our other main lead and who I'd say is kind of the nerdy one. He and his friends run the AV club, which seems to consist of the 3 of them sitting around recreating music from anime and the like. And June, who doesn't fit in anywhere. None of them are pleased to be appointed to this committee, and June tries to tell the teacher she doesn't want this, along with all the others, but she can't quite get the words out. But her effort is still enough to shock her classmates who've never heard her make a sound. Ultimately, their teacher won't back down, so the 4 are left to try and figure something out for the Community Outreach Night. And though I do consider June and Takumi to be the 2 main leads, all 4 are given a pretty fair share of the spotlight, and I really liked getting to know all of them. Daiki comes across as the most rough around the edges. He doesn't even show up for any of their committee meetings until the movie's half over, not that that stops him from critiquing every decision the others try to make. You get the impression that baseball was his whole life, and he's not reacting well to being sidelined. He still goes to every practice, critiquing everything they do, and just being really overbearing in general. Even his teammates are getting sick of him. Daiki's story is mostly about him learning to better understand the people around him, that everyone's struggling with something. Not that he gets any less intense, but I loved seeing his focus shift to putting his all into their project instead. I love a good redemption story in general, and that can be hard to pull off in a 2-hour movie, especially one that gives equal focus to 3 other characters, but I felt that they did a good job with Daiki. Natsuki was redeemed in a way too, though I take full responsibility for the wall her character had to overcome. I'd kind of written her off as being petty and superficial as soon as her character was established, which really wasn't something she deserved. She is the popular one, and that pull becomes important later, but she was hardly a bully. There was one moment early on where it looked like things might get dicey between the 2 girls. Natsuki makes some comment about being annoyed by people who can't speak their minds, but it's not directed at June. In fact, she looks like she regrets it almost immediately when she realizes June might have taken it as a personal insult. As the movie goes on, we see that it was really directed at herself, that a past moment in her life when Natsuki was unable to speak her mind is still haunting her to this day. That's kind of a common thread for all our main characters. As we get to know Taku better, we learn 2 important things about him. One, that his parents are also divorced and he lives with his grandparents, and 2, that he's really musical and used to really enjoy music, though he mostly left it behind after the divorce. I really like that dark sort of irony, so his story stuck with me. As he and June get closer, he talks about his parents' divorce, and how music was a big source of tension between them. His dad's a musician, but his mom wanted Taku to focus more on his studies. Taku took his dad's side in that debate, and his mom hasn't been in contact with him since they split. But then his dad decided to pursue his career, leaving Taku with his grandparents, which has kind of soured Taku's own love for music. But it's reawakened as they keep brainstorming for the outreach night. As they spend more time together, communicating mostly through text, June opens up to him too, and tells him about her curse. Taku suggests that music might be a loophole, that her curse prohibits speaking, not singing, and when she tests it out, June finds she is able to sing her words without making herself sick. Which, doesn't become a regular thing, but when she sees how talented Taku is, she asks him to turn her story, or rather, a more dramatized version of her life story, into a song. In the end, there's enough material to write an entire musical, which they decide to use for the community outreach night. If there was one thing I knew I wanted to keep in mind when writing the review, it was that this movie does feel very genuine. I know it sounds super cheesy, everyone coming together through the power of music, but it really didn't feel that way. When they first present their idea to the class, no one is on board with it. They have exactly the sort of reactions you'd expect from a regular class of high schoolers told to put together their own musical. But this is where the students selected for the committee really shine. They each have their different groups and connections within the class, friends who want to support them, and they slowly win them over, appealing to their unique talents, and also largely by promising to do the bulk of the work themselves. Their teacher is presented as being a very easygoing, simple guy, but this made me suspect that he'd actually put a lot of thought into choosing the committee members, recognizing his class's lack of enthusiasm and hand-picking the ones he thought could motivate them. Anyway, it felt like a subtler part of the story, but I really enjoyed seeing them all come together as a team and get excited for the musical. I don't want to give away too much more. This is the sort of movie I think everyone should see for themselves. It feels like all that's left is to stress how beautiful every aspect of this movie is. The animation, for one. It's always nice to go from a bunch of series that were rushed to get out on a weekly basis to a movie where you can tell they had the time and resources to make it everything they wanted it to be. And the music caught my attention right away, too. There's a lot of focus on fairy tales, and a lot of the background music sounded, to me, like rearrangements of old Disney songs, and the last song of their musical is set to the tune of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I thought it was a nice touch, on top of just giving things a sense of familiarity. But mostly what moved me was the characters, their stories and the lessons they learn along the way. June acknowledges very early on, as a sort of aside anyway, that her speech problems stem from some form of anxiety. She does know, somewhere within herself, that this curse she's dreamed up is actually just some sort of defense mechanism, a way for her child's brain to make sense of all the guilt she was feeling. The real journey in this story is watching June learn to accept that she's not just an inherently bad person, doomed to hurt someone anytime she opens her mouth, that her parents' divorce isn't something she can take the blame for, even if that would make it easier to accept. And it was equally moving to see her new friends all relate to her story in their own ways. They've all got things they've been afraid to say, or had experiences where they regret saying something they couldn't take back. Though it touches on some serious topics, this felt like a very feel-good movie in general, watching them all support each other. I love these sort of psychological topics, so the Anthem of the Heart appealed to me right from the first time I read the synopsis, but it's not a movie I have any reservations about recommending. I think these topics really transcend these specific characters. I feel like everyone can relate to it in some way and get something out of this experience, and I encourage you all to see it, if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.